I want to start with something that most people in my industry will never say out loud. The franchise consulting business has a conflict of interest problem, not a small one, a structural one that is baked into how most consultants are compensated, how most networks are organized, and how most candidates end up in conversations with people whose financial incentives are not particularly aligned with their outcomes. Transactional franchise brokers have decided that this is a volume game. I still believe this role is about my candidates' dreams, goals, and futures. I'm saying all of this out loud because I've been a buyer-focused franchise investment strategist for over 22 years. My entire career, 30 plus years, has been built on one premise: that the person across the table from me deserves someone in their corner whose primary interest is their outcome, not the transaction, not a specific brand, not a completed referral. And because after 30 years in this industry, I've watched what happens when candidates choose the wrong consultant or broker, or choose no consultant at all, and arrive at the closing table having made decisions that cost them significantly. Not because the franchise was wrong, but because the process that led them there was not designed to serve them. Today, I want to give you everything you need to evaluate any franchise consultant you speak with, including me. Let me start with something that surprises most people who are new to the process. The franchise consulting industry is not a regulated profession. There are some attempts to change that, but they haven't landed yet. There is no licensing requirement, no fiduciary standard, no bar exam, no governing body that sets a standard of practice and enforces it. Anyone can call themselves a franchise consultant, and many do. You've probably seen the same scenario with real estate agents, for example. This is not a criticism of our industry. It's a fact that every candidate deserves to know before they start the process, because it means you're navigating a landscape where the word consultant covers an enormous range of what is actually happening behind the scenes. Let me walk you through what that landscape actually looks like. There are essentially three types of people operating in franchise consulting or franchise brokering right now. The first, the franchise broker. This is a most common model in the industry. Broker maintains relationships with a portfolio of franchise brands. When a candidate comes in the door and expresses an interest in one of those brands, possibly because of advertising that they've seen or a social media post touting a particular brand or industry, the broker facilitates the introduction and receives a referral fee from the franchisor when that deal closes. So because of advertising or social media, a candidate appears in front of a franchise broker, expresses interest in a particular brand, the franchise broker makes the introduction and gets paid. The candidate doesn't pay anything directly. The broker doesn't pay anything. The franchisor pays when transaction is completed with a brand from the broker's portfolio. I want to be totally fair here. There are excellent franchise brokers, people who have built deep knowledge of the brands they represent and who take their responsibility to find the right fit seriously. This model isn't inherently corrupt, but the structural incentive is clear. The broker is compensated by the franchisor for a transaction with a specific brand. That's not a buyer-side relationship. That's a referral relationship. And the distinction matters enormously for the candidate sitting across from them. The second type is what I would call the franchise directory. Some operations that present as consultants are primary lead generation platforms. They collect candidate information through a website, a quiz, a phone call, and distribute it to franchise development teams who pay for access to those leads. The consultation is a sorting mechanism for the lead generation business. The candidate receives introductions, not strategic counsel, not a genuine diagnostic, just introductions. These firms often have huge franchise databases monetizing the fee to get listed, not smaller curated lists. Oftentimes, they even sell franchises to become a broker to people who have not owned franchises or worked in franchising themselves. These first two categories aim typically to be high-volume transactional brokers. Less time with candidates, more time running their machine. Some of the parent companies are even owned by private equity. Now, the third type, the one that I've spent over 22 years trying to be every day, is the buyer-focused franchise investment strategist. This model is compensated by the franchisor when a placement is made, the same as a broker. So the direct cost to the candidate remains zero. But the structural commitment is fundamentally different. The buyer-focused franchise investment strategist works almost exclusively with the candidates, not the franchisors. They have no preferred portfolio that creates a pressure towards specific referrals. They have no particular financial interest in which brand you choose. The fees remain pretty level across all the companies that they match your candidates to. Their only financial interest, the ones that they build their business on, that they depend on, is whether you succeed, because their plan, my plan, is helping you over the long term, building multiple locations, multiple brands over many years, not that one-time first sale and no particular focus on the outcome. Because a buyer-side practice built on 30 years in the industry lives or dies on one thing: outcomes, not transactions. I've got many candidates that I've worked with for over a decade. A couple of them that were still talking about their first franchise. Now I want to give you something practical. 7 questions you can ask any franchise consultant in the first conversation that will give you a pretty good idea of who you're dealing with. Question 1. Do you work exclusively with buyers, or do you also represent franchisors? This one question tells you the structural reality of the relationship before anything else is said. A genuine buyer-side consultant works primarily with the buyers, engaging franchisors for things like territory checks and getting questions answered for candidates. But their focus is primarily in one direction: yours. If the answer involves any form of franchisor representation, brand development, or franchise sales, you need to understand that before you go forward. Question 2. How many brands are in your portfolio and how are they selected? Some networks out there have over 500 brands, which sounds good on the surface, but when a portfolio is that large, the selection criteria is certainly not quality, it's breadth. More brands means more transaction opportunities. A genuine strategist tends to work with a curated set of brands that they know deeply. Through franchisee conversations, unit economics review, and direct relationships built over the years, the number matters less than the depth of knowledge behind it. Question 3. Have you ever told a candidate that a specific franchise was wrong for them? Or even that this wasn't the right time for them to own any business? And can you give me an example? This is the most revealing question on the list. Every honest, experienced buyer-side consultant has these stories. The candidate who was in love with a brand and that I had to tell them that their daily operational reality would grind them down. The executive who wanted a food franchise. They said, "I love burgers, so I want to buy a burger franchise," or something like that. And then they get redirected to maybe a B2B service model because the fit was completely different than what their enthusiasm suggested. If a consultant cannot give you a specific example Or if the answer is vague and generic, you know you are in a sales process, not a strategic one. Question 4. How do you evaluate fit, and what is the actual process? There is a right answer to this question. It involves a structured diagnostic of the candidate's operational strengths, financial profile, and life goals. Before any brand is introduced, specific questions about daily work preferences, management style, risk tolerance, household financial requirements, and what the candidate is actually building toward. The wrong answers for a first-time franchise candidate involves starting with a brand presentation, a category preference question, or a lifestyle quiz that's really a lead qualification exercise dressed up as strategy. Question 5. How are you compensated, and does it change based on which brand I choose? Ask this directly. A legitimate consultant answers without hesitation. The honest answer in the buyer side model is, I'm compensated by the franchisor when a placement is made at no cost to you. My compensation is roughly equivalent across the brands that I work with, so I have no financial incentive to steer you towards one over another. My only driving interest is that you succeed. If there are different fee structures for different brands or certain placements are more financially attractive than others, that structural incentive could influence recommendations, whether the consultant intends it to or not. On a side note, for over 20 years, I have offered that if a candidate wants to hire and pay me directly, they can. But after getting to know me and my work, they've always let the franchisor pay my fee. The franchise fee remains the same either way, just as if they found that franchise on their own through their own process or used me. The only difference is if they pay me, then the franchisor makes more money. Question 6. What happens if you conclude that no franchise in your portfolio is right for me? This question is one of the clearest signals whether you're talking to a genuine buy-side strategist or a transaction facilitator. The right answer sounds like this. If I conclude that no franchise I send candidates to is right for you, I'll tell you that, and I'll tell you why. May even tell you that franchise ownership or any business ownership isn't the right next step for you at this moment. That's subject to change. My goal is your best outcome, not a completed transaction. If the answer redirects to, I'm sure we can find something that works, you're being sold to unless there's some key criteria in your model that is changed. And the consultant or broker should tell you what changed and why new matches now make sense. Question 7. What is your operational background in franchising? Not how long have I or any other consultant been consulting, but how did you build the expertise behind the advice you're about to give me? The perspective that makes a buyer-side strategist genuinely valuable is not just brand knowledge. It's having operated inside of the system at multiple levels and in different ways. As a franchisee, as a franchisor operations executive, as a franchisor development executive or support executive, even as an independent business owner, and as a long-term buyer-side consultant. That combination of perspectives, seeing the system from every angle, is what allows a genuine strategist to cut through the marketing presentations and tell you what is actually true about a model and whether it fits you or not. Let me tell you what that first conversation with the right consultant actually looks like, so you know what to expect and what to walk away from. It starts with you, not the brands, not the categories, not the investment levels. You. The first 30 to 45 minutes should be questions that have got nothing to do with franchising. What does your ideal Tuesday look like? not a vacation, your ideal, ordinary workday. What have you demonstrated that you're genuinely good at across your career? What does your household need this business to produce and when? Not what you hope it produces, but what it has to produce for your life to work. While we're not going to get into earnings claims or projections or any of that, I need to have some idea of whether what you're expecting is replicatable in a franchise situation. What are you actually building? A job replacement, a wealth vehicle, a portfolio, or a legacy that you're going to hand down to your kids? And what does your support system look like? Those answers build your profile. The profile is not a sales qualification instrument. It's the diagnostic that determines which franchise models are viable for you and which ones will grind you down regardless of how good they look from the outside. Only after the profile is complete should any brand or category conversation begin. And when it does, the strategist should be explaining why specific models align with your specific dimensions that we put together in your profile. Not presenting inventory and asking what looks good. The first conversation should end with a clear picture of your fit profile and either a path forward or an honest statement that more information is needed. What it should not end with is a list of brands, a discovery day invitation, or pressure towards a decision timeline. Let me give you the signals that should send you elsewhere. They lead with hot categories for first-time candidates. Different scenario possibly for experienced buyers coming in. But if the first thing a consultant tells you is a specific category is booming right now, they are presenting inventory. While that may be a conversation for a proven owner, the right franchise for you is determined by what fits who you are, not what's trending. The pressure timeline. Legitimate franchise evaluation is not time limited, even though most fall within a predictable range. If a consultant creates urgency around territory availability or a closing deadline, that urgency is not serving you, it's serving the transaction. If you miss a fast-selling brand in your desired territory, there is likely another brand or another type of business that we could consider in the same market. The key is that it fits your profile. Only franchisors can make earnings representations, and those belong in the franchise disclosure document. If the consultant does make earnings claims, that's a red flag. After the FDD, what a genuine strategist does is prepare you to talk directly to the franchisees who are already inside the system at all performance levels, who have no legal constraint on telling you what their experience has actually been, good or bad. If a consultant rushes or discourages those conversations, they may not be serving your interests. They never say no. If a consultant has never redirected a candidate away from a franchise they loved or from being in franchising or a business owner at all, they're either very new or not being very honest. The willingness to say no is the clearest signal that the strategist's loyalty is focused on your outcome rather than the transaction. I want to close with something direct. You deserve a consultant who knows your profile so well they can tell you in concrete terms why a specific model or brand does or doesn't fit who you are. Not enthusiasm, specific reasoning. You deserve honesty about what the difficult early months actually look like before you sign anything. You deserve a strategist who thinks about your exit from the beginning, not just your entry. What does this franchise look like at level 3 of Knauf's hierarchy of franchising, or at level 4, multi-unit, multi-brand? What does the exit value look like in 10 years if you build it the way the model supports? You deserve someone who's still in the conversation after the franchise agreement signed, because they are genuinely invested in your outcome, somebody that'll be here for you for years, even decades. The right consultant doesn't make the decision for you. They make you so well informed, so clearly positioned on the map, and so honest about what you're building and whether a specific model can get you there, that the decision becomes clear on its own. That is what a buyer-focused franchise investment strategist actually does. And it's what you deserve. Take just a moment to brag about my friends. In every brand in the franchise consulting brokerage industry, you can find good people. I am particularly proud of the team at FranChoice, the company that I've associated with for over 22 years. From the corporate office to the newest consultants, everybody on that team is top quality and buyer focused. While I would certainly love you to reach out to me if you're serious about this process, serious about finding your perfect fit, I know you can do the same thing with any consultant at FranChoice. I have confidence in that. If you want to have that conversation with me, go to myperfectfranchise.com. If you're already at level 3 or 4, multi-unit, multi-brand, and you're looking forward to what you have to do to pursue a private equity exit, an institutional exit, the Orca conversation is at orcaz.com, ORCAZEE.com. And if you haven't read The Last Employee, The Rise of Ownership yet, that's my book. The map is on Amazon for just $4.99. It was written exactly for this conversation in this moment. I'm George Knauf, franchise investment strategist, buyer-focused for over 30 years, creator of Knauf's Hierarchy of Franchising, founder of Orca Franchising, and author of The Last Employee, The Rise of Ownership, and keynote speaker for the International Franchise Association. This is Franchise Snacks, Season 2, Episode 14. Let's go.